Welcome or welcome back to my TBR project, Read It or Unhaul It series. This is episode 5, which is insane to think about. And you may notice that there are more books on the chopping block in this episode, and that's because I've decided to condense them. I have presently, at the time of filming this, 15 books to go, including the ones you see here, and the rest that are on my TBR cart. Now, before we get into just what we're reading this episode, I wanted to mention that as I was going through my TBR cart to pick out books for this episode, I made the decision to unhaul a couple of books, the first being The Belinda Seat. I'm just not really interested in it anymore. It was a library rescue as they were reading it, and so I'm moving on from that, and I'll show you the others that I've decided to not let go of, but adjust. I've also removed these 3 from my TBR. I'm not getting rid of them, I'm not unhauling them because they were a gift from a dear friend. I just don't see myself reading them cover to cover. I think what I'll probably do is just flip through and read what looks interesting, but yeah, I just don't think they need to be in my TBR because I don't expect to read all of them all the way through. First up is going to be The Lost Book of the White by Cassandra Clare and Wesley Chu. Next up is Ebonwild by Crystal Smith, which is of course the finale in the Bloodleaf trilogy. And now we're back to another reread with Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This will be an interesting one. So the first time I read this, it felt like kind of a slog. Like, I liked it, but it just took forever for me to get through because it's so dense. But so many people I watch on YouTube love the series, so I wanted to reread it to see if maybe the second time around it was a little faster, a little easier, and see if I would want to continue the series or if this is getting unhauled. Next up is the Trill Trilogy by Amanda Hawking, and this series is another reread for me, and I simply wanted to see if I still vibe with it or if it's a little too young and I feel like passing it on so that other people can enjoy it, because I remember really liking it. And then we've got Nick Blake and the Remarkables by Angie Thomas. Actually, this and the next book on the list are both ARCs. I will probably wind up reading them, the ebook or audiobooks, but we'll see. And of course, we've got Gallant by Victoria Schwab, Wicked Lovely by Melissa Marr, which this has been on my unofficial, on Goodreads and now Storygraph TBR for over half my life. This was recommended by a friend when I was, 14 or 15, and I'm now 32, so we're finally getting to it. And Wondrous Strange by Leslie Livingston. Now is that I have started the audiobook for The Lost Book of the White, and I'm about 2 hours in, and I am not loving it. The plot is fine. It's neither here nor there. I don't have a whole lot of feelings on it. I do think the audio was the way to go for me. I think it would have taken me a lot longer to get this far if I read it physically, but I can't stand the way that the narrator does Jace and Clary's voices. Jace sounds like a Valley Girl a lot of the time, which, no tea, no shade, but that is not how I imagined his voice would be. And Clary just sounds like such an airhead a lot of the time, and I know she's not the smartest. I get that, but it's just a little annoying. But I'm not mad enough to DNF it at this point, so I'm going to continue until either I finish or I DNF. So I actually have just under an hour left in the audiobook, but I've decided I don't feel the need to hold on to the physical copy, and I don't think the last hour of the story is probably going to change that. The plot was fine. It just didn't thrill me, and I don't see myself wanting to reread this book ever again, so I think it would be best donated to a little free library so that somebody else can enjoy it. So that means we're on to the next book in this video, and that's Red Rising. So this is another one I think I'm going to borrow the audiobook for, because the first time I read it physically, and it took me forever to get through because it's so dense. So at the very least, I'll be kind of dual reading the physical copy and the audio, if not just exclusively the audio. So I'm back with quite a few updates. It has been probably 2 weeks since I've updated the video, and that's because life has been wild. I've been so busy, but in that time I have started Ebonwild, finished Red Rising, which I listened to the graphic audio, and oh my goodness, I was so impressed. And I've also started the first book in the Trill trilogy. So let's start with Red Rising. I meant to update while I was listening to it, but I just didn't get a chance to, and I was loving it so much that I couldn't slow down. I wanted to finish it. I wanted to get through it, and I wanted to keep enjoying it. So I listened to the graphic audio, which I had never experienced one before, and I'd heard, I think it was Becca in the Books talked about this specific audiobook probably 6 months ago, maybe a year, in one of her vlogs, and I kind of like put that was in the back of my brain, and so when it came time to get the audio for this, that's what I went with, and I am obsessed. I mean, that is an aggressive book to do a graphic audio, so like, maybe not for the faint of heart, maybe not for the squeamish. It's very violent. And I found that I loved the story a lot more than when I read it physically like a decade ago. It's so good. The characters really came alive. I loved the voice actors. I think they did a phenomenal job. The soundscape was amazing. It really does sound like a movie, which is wild. But it was such a good experience that I think I'm going to be continuing the series with the graphic audios in the future once I finish my TBR. So I also mentioned that I started Ebonwild, which is the last book in the Bloodleaf trilogy. And I think I have about 10, maybe 12 chapters in at this point, and it's a lot slower than the first 2 books, so I don't have a whole lot of thoughts yet. I really like that we're seeing more of the world and like the ramifications of the events of the first book. And yeah. So I'll update you when I have more. My last update for now is that I'm also about 11 chapters into Switched, which is the first book in the trilogy. So for the first like 45 pages of this book, I was convinced I was going to DNF it because the main character, Wendy, her brother, and her love interest annoy the crap out of me. Her brother's controlling and obnoxious, and like, I get it. They both face a lot of really extreme trauma in their childhood, and so he feels the need to protect her, and that means that he's controlling because of the level of trauma that he sustained and that she sustained as children. But I can't with controlling characters. They drive me bonkers. And her love interest is also like a little bit controlling, and he's obnoxious and like rude, and you know, like the standard like early 2000s YA fantasy love interest. He's exactly what you're picturing. But I remember really loving the world, and especially like the other characters, like the kind of ensemble cast that this series has. So I thought I'd try and stick it out, and if it just continues to annoy me, I will DNF. And if you're not familiar with this trilogy, Wendy is what they call a troll, which is a troll, and they do the whole changeling thing where parents exchange their troll child for a human child so that the troll grows up in the human world and reaps the benefits of their adoptive family because they're rich, they have a good education system, all of that. And then the troll child comes home, and eventually they get their inheritance and all of that. I do think the setup for their society being grifters and just like living off of their children's adopted family's inheritance is like fascinating and a lot more interesting than I gave it credit for when I read it like 15 years ago at this point. So I'm in it for the world building, I'm in it for the ensemble cast. We'll see how this goes. Actually, I lied. I have one more update because I've also started the audiobook for Uncultured by Daniela Mestenak-Young. And oh my goodness, I have so much empathy for this woman. She has been through it. If you're not familiar with that, I found her through TikTok. She grew up in the Children of God cult, and then she entered what she refers to as the cult of the US military. And so this is her memoir, and it is fascinating in that like train wreck kind of way where like it's not pleasant, it's not happy, but you can't stop listening. The author also reads the audiobook herself. I prefer to listen to my nonfiction rather than reading it physically. It helps me connect with it, helps me retain it better. And I think there's such power in a nonfiction author reading their own book, especially when it's a memoir and especially when it's heavy like this. It just hits different. And she is a phenomenal writer and a phenomenal storyteller, and I would highly recommend checking this out, but also it's very heavy, it's very dark, so beware and make sure you take care of your mental health first. I'm back with a couple of updates. First of all, I have decided to DNF and unhaul the trilogy. I made it 172 pages into the first book, Switched, and I'm just too old for this series. Every character except for like one of them at this point irritates me to no end, and I think it's just time that I give it to a little free library so that somebody else can enjoy it. I'm just too old for it at this point. I really wanted to hold out and get to the part where it explains the world, but at 172 pages in, it still hadn't done much of that yet, and my patience was wearing thin, so I decided to just let it go. I've also listened to about half of the audiobook for Uncultured, and it has been a time. If you want to be angry about abuse and power struggles and religion, this is the book for you. It's not a happy read, but I think it's an important one, and it's a really interesting perspective, and I've been following the author on TikTok for a couple of years at this point, which is how I found her book, and it's just wild to read her experiences and to see how she got to where she is today. And finally, I'm on chapter 17 of Ebenwild, and it's slow going, but I'm enjoying it. So this one is a lot slower paced than the second book was, but it's interesting. We're seeing more of the world. I think I mentioned that already. And there is a new kind of thread that they've started in which one of the main characters is getting kind of potentially swayed by this, what we're led to believe is a religious zealot and like cult leader. And I'm interested to see how that plays out. So I'll let you know when I'm further along and I have more thoughts. So I'm back with a couple of updates. First of all, I finished Uncultured and I sobbed through the end of it. So I'm still having trouble putting into words exactly how I felt about the book because it wasn't a happy read, but it was a good read. It was so impactful. It was aggressive, but I think it was a really important story, and I am so impressed with everything that she survived. No one should have to go through the stuff that the author went through. So if you're looking for a really hard-hitting memoir, I highly recommend. But as I've said when I first talked about this book, mind your mental health first. I'm almost finished with Ebenwild, and I'm really liking how it kind of deviates in format from the other two books, because up until this book we've pretty much just gotten Aurelia's point of view, and now we get like the whole ensemble, which is cool. And I especially like that it's focusing on her little brother and like him being a child king and navigating that and falling into the clutches of this like religious cult. I don't know why this is like a trend in what I'm reading recently. I didn't plan it that way, but here we are, and I'm liking it. I'm interested to see how it progresses. I'm ready to wrap this series up, and I will update you when I've finished it. My final update for right now is that I'm about a quarter of the way through Nick Blake and the Remarkables, and I'm obsessed. So I'm actually listening to the audiobook, and I'm loving it. The narrator is doing such a good job, and I love the world. I love the magic. I think the plot is really new and interesting. It's like another take on The Chosen One. I mean, I'm late to the game, so you probably already know this if you read middle grade at all, but I'm just obsessed, and all I want to do is read more. So I'll update you when I've done that. So I have a few more updates, and the first is that I finished Nick Blake and the Remarkables, and I'm obsessed with it, and I will be continuing the series once I finish my TBR. And I thought it was really well written. I love how the author used so much real life actual history and connected it, and we love black girl magic, so I'm a big fan. And I've already started Gallant. I actually started reading the ebook like I mentioned, but I found that it was taking a long time. It was hard to get into, so I switched to the audiobook, and I'm liking it a lot better now. So I love the atmosphere of Gallant, and I specifically love how the level of writing that has gone into this book it feels like an adult book, like new adult, or maybe like very upper YA, but it's actually, I think, meant for like just above middle grade maybe. And so like sometimes when I read middle grade or younger YA, it like feels a lot younger, and this doesn't feel like that, which is really refreshing, and it's helping keep me in the story, and I'm just loving listening to it. So I'm finding random things to clean around my house so that I have time to listen. My last update for now is that I've started Wicked Lovely, and I'm very impressed with the writing, honestly. I think the only other thing I've read by this author was earlier in this series, like Carnival of Souls, I think it was called, and I was just like, loved the concept, couldn't get into the writing or the characters. So very impressed with this, and this has been on my TBR for
like half my life at this point, so better late than never, but I'm really liking it. And I mean, I'm only like 2 chapters in, but it feels more mature than I expected it to. I think it's gonna be like a little like toxic because it's a romantasy that came out in 2009, so like it's gonna be a product of its time, I think, but so far I'm very impressed. I'm back with more updates. I've finished Gallant and I really liked it. I definitely understand what people were saying when the reviews that I read said that it was more vibe than plot. I do wish there had been like a little bit more to the plot than just her chasing this mystery of the house and her family. But overall, I liked it. I think right now I'm just kind of in a reading slump. I'm kind of over everything that's on my TBR because I've been staring at it for a year and I'm just kind of over it. So I will be donating the copy of Gallant that I have to a little free library. And we're moving on. I'm also 8 chapters into Wicked Lovely and I'm loving it. The writing is still immaculate. It's like a little bit toxic, like not as toxic as I'm sure it's bound to get given the time that it was written in and everything, but I'm really liking it so far. It's taking me a little bit to get through. I don't know, it's not hard to read, but it's like hard for me to get motivated to read, but once I get going, I like it. It's like one of those. And that's all I have for right now. I will be back once I've read some more, hopefully after I finish. I'm very excited to say that I finished Wicked Lovely and I absolutely loved it. I was very impressed with the quality of writing. I also loved that the fairies were more folklore rather than like, you know, the sexy versions that we get so often in romantasy these days. So that was refreshing. And I think the main character made a lot of sense for her age and her lived experiences. I think she made choices that made sense for her character and she was believable and I really appreciated that. I also loved the ending. I thought that was very smart and way ahead of its time, and I was so excited to see that it was not going to turn into a love triangle and like the boys were gonna fight over her because that's boring and I'm over it. So that was really, really nice to see. And I'm really excited to read the next one. So that means we're on to the last book for this video, and that is Wondrous Strange. So this one seems a little bit Wicked Lovely adjacent, where it's a girl with a sight and she has a run-in with fairies. It seems a little heavier on the romance than Wicked Lovely was, so I'm really hoping that this is going to be another, you know, 4.5 or 5 star for me, but I guess we'll have to see. So I'm up to chapter 17 of Wondrous Strange, and I'm really liking it. It does feel a little bit Wicked Lovely adjacent. It's also dealing with like Celtic fae tradition stuff, and I find that really interesting. I feel like we don't really see a lot of that in YA literature anymore. Like it was hot in like the 2009 to like 2012 era of fantasy, specifically YA, and we don't see it as much anymore. And I love the diversity, don't get me wrong, but this is just kind of feels like coming home. So I went into this one pretty much blind. It's about this young woman who's an actress. She's in A Midsummer Night's Dream, and then of course she runs into this like changeling boy who, you know, his job is to protect the gates, and it's close to Samhain or Halloween, and he is trying to keep all of the fae from coming through, and chaos ensues. And so I'm really enjoying it. It's been really hard to put down, and I'm hoping to get it finished in the next couple of days. I'm back and I have finished Wondrous Strange. So I wound up really liking it, and I'm really excited to move on to the sequel in my next video. I really loved the way that it wove in folklore. It just does it in such a way that feels genuine, and like the research is really there, and it's something about it is not like what I've read before. I don't know what it is about early to mid 2000s YA fantasy books, but they just have this like charm that I don't see in a lot of newer books, and I was really enchanted by this story. So that's the end of this reading vlog. There'll be one more in this series, and then we're done with my TBR from last year, which is wild to think about. I'm like not thrilled that it took me this long, but hey, at least we're here now. So I would love it if you would give me a like and maybe subscribe if you like what I do here, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.